Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. In the second part of this episode, I'm going to focus on realistic expectations for your fat loss phase. I'm going to cover realistic expectations about how much weight you can lose and realistic expectations about your calories, whether they're going to stay the same, how perfect, quote unquote, you need to be in order to see results, and more. Thank you for being here and enjoy the episode. Now I want to give you some more practical expectations, and I'm going to start with some expectations on how much weight you can lose. For your fat loss phase to be sustainable, in that you can actually see the entire diet through, or you are much more likely to do so, and to be healthy as well, so that you're not losing so fast that you're at risk of muscle loss, for example, you want to aim to lose between 0.5% and a maximum of 2% of your body weight every week. Now, within this large range, 0.5 to 2%, I usually identify two ranges. If you're a smaller person, if you're a leaner person, and you therefore need to lose less weight than somebody who's carrying a lot of extra body fat, it would behoove you to lose weight at a slower pace of about 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week. Conversely, if you're a bigger person and or you have a lot of extra body fat to lose, for example, you are considered obese according to the BMI, then you can afford to lose that weight faster, because essentially the less body fat you carry, the more your body will fight you against losing it. So you might end up losing a little bit more muscle than you would want if you were to lose weight too fast. And if you're a smaller person, trying to lose weight too fast might also require you to lower your calories to a point where you're risking nutrient deficiencies, because if you have fewer calories in absolute terms, you simply don't have a lot of room to have all of the nutrients that you need. For example, I'm 5 feet tall. Just that. There are no inches added to that. It's 5 feet, that's it. So if I wanted to lose weight really, really fast, assuming that we're using the rule of thumb that if you eat 500 calories less than your maintenance every day, you lose a pound per week. For one, that's already 1% of my body weight. If I wanted to lose weight even faster, go to 2% and lose 2 pounds per week, I would have to reduce my calories by 1,000. My maintenance is around 1,900 calories. That would mean going down to 900 calories per day. Now, somebody who's taller than me, 6 foot tall, maybe they are assigned male at birth, so they have a faster metabolism because they carry more muscle mass. Maybe their maintenance is now 3,500 calories. To lose 2 pounds, they need to go down by 1,000 calories too, but now they're eating 2,500 calories. They still have a gazillion calories to get in enough nutrients. We're both going to be in a fat loss phase, so it's going to be challenging for both of these two types of people, but the smaller person is very, very unlikely to have a successful diet phase, a healthy diet phase, and even to see the diet phase through, because it's simply too extreme an approach. So if you're on the smaller side, you've got to be more patient. So I went on a bit of a tangent. So just to recap really quickly, if you're a smaller person or you have less body fat to lose, 0.5 to 1% of your body weight lost per week is a reasonable amount of weight to expect to lose. If you're a bigger person and or you have a bigger amount of fat to lose, then 1 to 2% of your body weight per week is also a reasonable amount to expect to lose. Now, my rule of thumb as a coach is that if you lose at least half a pound per week, you're making amazing progress. Because if you think about it with a long-term perspective, losing half a pound for the 52 weeks in a year means that at the end of the year, you have lost 26 pounds. That is nearly 2 stone if you're based in England. That is a massive amount of body weight to lose. So half a pound per week, as a general rule of thumb, if you're losing at least that much, in my opinion, you can make great progress. However, you do need to find a sweet spot where you're losing enough weight that it keeps you motivated within the 0.5% to 2% range that I've suggested. If enough weight to stay motivated for you is 3% of your body weight per week or 6 pounds per week, you simply have unrealistic expectations and you need to work on those. So you want to find a compromise between losing enough weight that you're motivated, because if you're losing at a snail pace of 0.1 pound per week, you're not going to stay on it, between your ability to stay consistent, because the faster you're trying to lose, the larger your caloric deficit needs to be. So you need to eat less and move more, and do that to a more extreme extent the faster you want to lose weight, and between what's a reasonable, realistic, healthy pace for you based on your size and the amount of weight you need to lose in total. However, if you were paying attention, you'll have noticed that I said a while ago that I was assuming that eating 500 calories below your maintenance per day would lead to a 1 pound loss per week. I said that because you can't expect to lose a pound every single week, even if you do exactly that, because your body isn't a robot, it's an organism which is going to undergo several shifts that in weight on the scale that have nothing to do with the amount of body fat you're losing or gaining. Some weeks you'll be in a 500 calorie deficit and you lose a pound. Some weeks you'll actually stay exactly the same, lose less than a pound, or you might even gain weight. And that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that calories don't work. It has to do with the fact that our body is predominantly made of water, and we can experience water retention or water losses week to week based on a lot of factors. For example, if you have hard workouts, you're more prone to gaining weight the next day due to inflammation and a bit more water retention. If you're under a lot of stress, that also causes water retention, and it tends to make your weight go up on the scale, because retention means you're holding on to water. If you're not sleeping, again, stress levels go up, water retention goes up. Or something that has nothing to do with water is you might be building muscle. If you're a newbie and you're trying to be in a fat loss phase, but you're also building muscle because you've never trained before, which can happen to a newbie in the gym, then you might not be losing any weight, but that's because your body is actually replacing the fat that you're losing with muscle. So the number on the scale stays the same. For all of these reasons, you don't want to get married to the idea that you're going to lose a certain amount of body weight every single week. So when I said that you can reasonably expect to lose 0.5 to 2% of your body weight per week, I mean on average over a long period of time, not every single freaking week. So don't get discouraged if that doesn't happen, because it's totally normal that it won't happen. Since I touched upon building muscle while also losing fat, I want to expand a little bit on that topic, because it's important to have realistic expectations about your ability to build muscle while you're trying to lose fat. First of all, is that possible? The answer is yes and no. If you're a beginner, or if you haven't trained in a long time, and or if you have a large amount of body fat to lose, for example, you fall within the obese category based on your BMI, it is easier to lose body fat at the same time as you build muscle that you've never had or muscle that you've lost and you're now regaining by coming back to training. The longer you train for, the more advanced you become, the harder it becomes to build muscle under optimal conditions. And optimal conditions for muscle growth are eating at least enough calories to maintain your body weight, or even better, a little bit more calories, so being in a slight caloric surplus. If it becomes more difficult to build muscle under optimal conditions, you can imagine it becomes twice as hard to build muscle under suboptimal conditions, which is when you're not giving your body the energy that it needs to maintain the same amount of the same body weight or to increase that body weight by adding muscle. So the longer you've been in the game of training, the slower muscle growth is going to be under optimal conditions, and it might be so slow as to be undetectable, so impossible to see or notice when you're in a fat loss phase. So, yes, you can build muscle when you're losing fat, but the more advanced you are, the more being in a fat loss phase is going to compromise your gains. And that's why with my clients, my more advanced clients, I tend to suggest that we focus on the fact that during a fat loss phase, we're going to prioritize seeing a loss of body fat and an improvement in your physique under those circumstances from that standpoint, as opposed to trying to look for less body fat but also more muscle, because that's unlikely to happen during a successful fat loss phase. For a more advanced trainee or someone who lifts regularly, the best you can achieve is often to maintain the muscle that you previously had before starting the diet. For example, I've been training for over 4 years now. When I go through a fat loss phase, I will see very, very minimal muscle growth. And at the tail end of the fat loss phase, when I'm very, very lean, if I choose to get very, very lean, then I usually expect that I will be maintaining my muscle mass. So that's what you would also want to expect. That's why you don't want to try and focus on building muscle and losing fat at the same time. Yes, it would be great to be able to have both, but it's unlikely. So it doesn't mean that one will happen and the other won't. It's not an either or situation. It's more like you want to mentally prioritize one over the other and focus on what you need to do in order to achieve one or the other more than you focus on what's needed to achieve both. Because if you focus on both, you're not going to do either very well. But if you focus on just the one, you're going to get great results with that. And you're still going to be able to get some results with the other goal. So if you're in a fat loss phase, focus on what you need to do to achieve fat loss, which is accomplishing your calorie targets on a weekly basis, training in the gym to maintain muscle mass and shape your body that's waiting to be exposed once you take off all the body fat, getting your steps and your cardio in. It's not, obviously, to eat in a caloric surplus to build more muscle, because that is the opposite of the caloric deficit that you need to lose body fat. Finally, I want to end the episode with some expectations on your calories. First of all, your calorie target for fat loss is unlikely to stay exactly the same from the beginning of the fat loss phase until the end. The reason being that when you spend a long time in a caloric deficit and you lose a considerable amount of weight, your body is going to undergo adaptations that are called metabolic adaptations to caloric restriction. These are changes to your metabolism and to your activity levels that result in you burning fewer calories, even though you may be doing the exact same activities that you were doing at the beginning of the fat loss phase. That's because your body becomes more efficient at using energy when it gets used to the fact that you're not feeding it as much energy as you used to. So it can't afford to waste any energy like it might do when it has plenty of energy because you're eating at maintenance calories. So it's very likely and common for your calories to have to go down when you've been dieting for a while in order to prevent plateaus. That's why I mentioned in the previous episode that your starting fat loss calories are only a starting point, emphasis on starting point, and you may need to adjust if you find that for several weeks you haven't been losing body fat, even though you have been very consistent with your calories. In addition, your maintenance calories are also going to change from the beginning to the end of your fat loss phase. For a very simple and intuitive reason, a smaller body requires less energy than a bigger body. So, if at the beginning of your fat loss phase your maintenance calories were 2200, at the end of your fat loss phase, if you lose around 5 to 10% of your body weight, expect that your calories may be lower. I can't give you an exact number because everybody is different, but don't increase your calories all the way get back up to 2200 and expect to maintain your weight because that might not happen. Third, because of apps like MyFitnessPal, we're used to sticking to a daily calorie budget in order to achieve fat loss. However, fat loss doesn't happen overnight or over the course of 24 hours. It happens over a longer period of time. So rather than using a daily budget, which can be discouraging, especially if you find that on one day you couldn't stick to your calories and you went over, and you might find yourself thinking, oh, that was a wasted day. This is an entirely wasted week. I will not be losing any fat because of that one day. As I said, fat loss doesn't happen overnight, so don't use a daily budget. Use a weekly budget. Take your daily calorie targets and multiply it by 7. So, for example, let's say that you're supposed to eat 1500 calories per day to lose body fat. 1500 times 7 is 10,500. If you add up the number of calories you eat every single day for 7 days, and the total is the same or less than 10,500 calories, you are going to lose body fat, which also means that you can make adjustments to your days, which also means that if on one day you go over your calories by, let's say, 200, all you need to do is eat 100 fewer calories on a couple of days, or you eat 200 fewer calories the next day, and the total amount of calories for the week will remain unchanged. It will still be within your weekly budget. So if you go over your calories on one day, you have the days after to make up for it. Because all that matters is that your calories are within the range that you're supposed to hit for fat loss across the week, not on any individual day. My fourth point is that you don't need to hit your calories perfectly every single day. For example, if your goal is 1500 calories, you don't have to hit 1500 on the dot. And if it's 1503, you're totally off target. Some people can drive themselves truly insane about this when it's unnecessary and also impossible to track your calories perfectly. And I'll tell you exactly why. First of all, the calories you find on any food label are an estimation and can be legally wrong by 20% up or down, meaning that if your food label states that a serving contains 100 calories, that can be anywhere between 80 calories and 120. And the reason why it is illegal for food labels to be wrong is that calories themselves are not an accurate measure. They are the best estimation of energy that scientists have been able to come up with so far. Secondarily, even the calories on your fitness tracker or that your fitness tracker says that you burn on a daily basis are wildly incorrect. There is plenty of research showing that fitness trackers don't track your calorie burn accurately, and in fact, they don't track pretty much anything accurately except for your step count. So your calorie burn, your sleep quality, your heart rate. Unfortunately, there is no fitness tracker that's commercially available that tracks these metrics reliably. Whereas it seems like, again, according to research, most fitness trackers are most reliable to track steps. For all of these reasons, there is no need to aim for 100% perfection when it comes to tracking your calories. What you need to aim for is consistency. So you want to track everything you eat every single day, and you want to aim for a weekly, not a daily, calorie budget, which you need to plan for in order to hit, because you can't wing fat loss. Otherwise, we'd all be in amazing shape. If you don't plan to hit your calories, it's not going to happen. And planning means that you're going to use your calorie tracking app not as a diary to look back on, but as a planner for the future. What I recommend to all my clients is one of these two options. Either you prepare your meal plan for the next day, the day before, and you already plug it into your calorie tracking app. Or if you're too busy to prepare a whole day's worth of food on your food tracking app the day before, then you can go about your day and track on the fly. However, what you're going to plan for is at least the very last meal of the day. So that's when you get to the end of the day and before you make your final meal, you're going to check how many calories you've got left on your app, and you're going to plan a meal that fits within those calories. These are the two options that I found most effective to ensure that my clients hit their calorie targets and stay on top of fat loss regardless of what life throws at them. That's it for today's episode on realistic, practical, and mindset expectations to embark on a successful fat loss phase. Now, to recap the No Quit Kit series so far, we covered how to retrain your mindset to see fat loss in a more positive light so that you feel empowered and you actually enjoy the process rather than focusing too much on getting to the end result and therefore taking an unrealistic approach to get there and falling off track. Then we covered how to set effective targets for fat loss in particular, but any fitness endeavor in general as well. In the previous episode, we covered all of the key performance indicators for fat loss. So your calories, your steps, your cardio, your resistance training, protein fiber, and how to set your own starting targets to lose body fat consistently. And now in this episode, I've covered everything I wish I had known the first time I wanted to try a fat loss diet. Because if I'd known all of this, I would have been a lot more successful. I would have enjoyed the process a lot more. I would have had greater results, and I would have been able to be more consistent. As always, I'm going to leave you with a little task for the end of the episode, and it's again a journaling task. Once you finish listening, I want you to answer this question. What's the biggest takeaway that I got from this episode? We all have had unrealistic expectations about fat loss in the past. While you were listening, you might have had a sudden aha moment where you went, oh, I wish I'd known this. I wish I had known to expect this in the past. Maybe you just always expected to lose 5 pounds per week. So your big aha moment was, oh, actually, losing half a pound is incredible progress. I want you to think about what your aha moment was and to write it down on a piece of paper and stick that piece of paper to your fridge or wherever you see it every day so that you keep it in mind for the duration of your fat loss phase, because your aha moment is going to be extremely valuable to help you stay consistent because it highlights a previous weakness of yours, which you can now correct thanks to this podcast and the knowledge you've gained, so that you can stay more consistent and see greater results. Lastly, by the time this episode comes out, it will be Sunday, August 7th. So there's still time to sign up for Transformation Kickstart, my 6-week group coaching program. So I'm going to add a link in the show notes as usual. Sign-ups close either when I reach 10 participants or on Friday, 19th of August. So don't wait until the last minute because I might have to close signups before the 19th of August. On the other hand, if you want to apply for one-on-one coaching, I'm taking on clients at the moment, so I'm going to add a link to the application form, which you can fill out to schedule a free face-to-face consultation with me in order to discuss your goals in depth and see how I can help and if we make a good fit. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.